And welcome back to Open Your Eyes. We're about to venture off into our second segment. Yet again, a very important topic. The Child Development Foundation. It's actually the 10th anniversary, and we'll be doing some reflections. We've got in with us Diana Shaw, who is the founder of CDF, and Verlie Lamb, who is a project coordinator of CDF. It's so nice to see both of you. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning and welcome back.
Yes.
Yes, welcome back indeed.
We're always happy to be here.
Well, let's.
I want to say just that because I think the Child Development Foundation has been on my mind since the start of this week, because I know we've had so many conversations with you about the work that you do in helping to protect children and especially young girls from the type of exploitation we've been seeing.
Yes.
I just want to get from you an initial reaction as the conversation starts to swell in the public. Lots of criticism, lots of concerns.
Yeah.
Yes.
What goes through your mind?
Well, firstly, I am glad that it is hitting the radar, that people don't ignore it. Because, I started this work. CDF is the 10th year of official registration, but I've been in Belize now 20 years. Yeah. This year is my 20th year in Belize. I also have to transition and bring in the younger generation. But this is my 20th year doing this work. And when I started, people wouldn't even discuss this at all. They was complete denial. So it's good that it is in the public forum, that people are recognizing that this is an issue, but we still have a long ways to go to learn how to adequately address it. Yeah. Because definitely some of the comments that have been made, there's a lot of misinformation. People didn't get correct information before they start making a lot of comments, and there is a lot of knee-jerk reactions. And we see always this immediate defense of the perpetrator over assuming that this is a victim situation. And that needs to change. People need to recognize that where you have sexual activity that involves a child and an adult, you don't have an equal power and control relationship. The parties are not equal. So there is a presumption of some form of exploitation and abuse until you investigate and find out if she's at the age of consent. And even if she's at the age of consent, the circumstances in which the sexual activity occurred, if there are any factors that will vitiate or nullify any consent. So the public we still have a long way to go to educate the public, and it is part of all of our responsibility. I am always grateful for the opportunity to share with the media, because you have such a wide reach to help people to understand these issues better. It's also, of course, the role of the government, and they are doing some of that. Other NGO organizations are also doing some of that. Yeah. But it's going to take a long time before we get the public to where people need to be, to ensure that when they see something like this happening, that their response is correct. And no country has it right yet. So Belize is...
So one of the things that has been discussed since the videos have been released, and specifically the video with the minor, is looking at cyberbullying legislation. We've talked a bit about what the legislation does protect and doesn't protect. What are your thoughts on where we need to go in terms of legislation and policy changes? Can we protect children just through the law? No, we can't, but it is important to have the law. Because if we're looking at the law enforcement response and the role of the judicial sector in bringing people to justice, they require laws to act. The judicial system doesn't work unless there is a legal framework on which they can act. So you do need laws. But laws don't change people's behavior. You need something deeper, and that's where we need to address the cultural issues and some of the cultural changes that have happened. And some of it is not a change, because actually we have always had children being exploited and abused. It's much more in the news now because we have social media that makes news so accessible. But this has always been happening. So it's an issue that we need to look at in terms of human behavior and our cultural norms, and how those cultural norms facilitate this kind of exploitation. And that's where we have been doing some work with our Rise Girls programs to help to address some of that. I know you've spoken before as well that there is a great extent of child sexual abuse that you encounter through your work, and that essentially what we are seeing just through the media is perhaps the tip of the iceberg as to the real terrible picture that lies within our society.
Absolutely. This year we started a new initiative in January. We added an additional counselor, and already since January to now we have 50 clients.
Wow.
And that's sexual abuse and exploitation. Referred by schools, some we're working with through the Department of Human Services, some through families. So it is a situation that, as I said before, will require more than just a legal reform and more than just legislative change, because there are deep-rooted issues of dysfunction and brokenness within our culture, within family dynamics, within community dynamics that promote and facilitate exploitation of children. It's not happening accidentally. These are intentional acts that are being done. People are targeting children.
Yes.
And our community norms facilitate them targeting children because we don't say anything. We ignore signs that we see. We blame victims. We don't teach children what they need to look out for in terms of the lures of perpetrators. We don't prepare girls for the onslaught that happens when you hit puberty in a rural community or in an urban community in Belize. How this becomes a thing that men see as an advertisement, a sign on you that you're open, and how the aggressive tactics that adult men use to reach 12, 13-year-old girls in Belize. We are not addressing that because nobody is talking to the men about these issues and men need to talk to other men about these issues. There's a lot of work that we are doing with girls to help them to understand how to navigate cultural dynamics and how to navigate these issues when you hit adolescence. But more work needs to be done with men, and that's where we are seeing the big gaps.
Yeah. And I was going to say, your organization does do some work with girls, and that's where I want to talk to Verlie about the RISE program. Is it called Rise Up?
Rise Girls.
Rise Girls. Yeah.
The initiative started in 2016. We got grant from Camefon out of Mexico to conduct Rise clubs within school. It was a project that was funded by UNICEF initially. We were in Belize City as well as Bamopan. And that phase of the project phased out, so we started the Rise Girls Club in October of 2016. It was funny because when I visited schools trying to figure out what all schools are we going to add to this program, all of the principals that we went to, they was like, yes, we need this in our schools. We're excited about this program. They did not even look at the documents. They were just willing and so open that we would sit down and have sessions with girls that would ensure that whatever it is that we're teaching them, it is going to help in the developmental phase.
What type of education are you talking about?
We do clubs within schools, and it's a program that lasts from October until May.
Yeah.
Every month we talk about, we have different topics, like month one we're doing getting to know you, we're talking about leadership, we're talking about women in politics, we're talking about the importance of being women leaders. In month two, we're talking about navigating relationship, peer relationship, parents relationship. Our target group is standard 4, 5, and 6 students. And then we're preparing the standard 6 students for when they go to high school.
Yeah.
We're talking to them about bullying and social media safety.
Yeah.
We talk to them about abuse and how to ensure that they're protecting themselves. One of the fun sessions that we do is our administration. Our administration class is always one of the most fun that the girls they have, because we're talking about how to use a pad and what kind of pad works for you, and we're talking about breast development.
And they never get the opportunity to talk about these things.
And so at home, right? And so I remember for our RISE youth trainers, there's all young people under 25 that do our sessions, and so they're able to meet the girls at at the place that they are. And so at first they start off shy. And once we continue with the program and we talk about the different things that they go through, they're so open. Like in one of our sessions last year, one of our trainers, Miss Milton, she was like, okay, I want you to go home and have conversations with your parents. No phone for a whole hour. And the girls, they did that. They went home and they learned so much about their mom. And they wrote, and one of the parents met us and said, we are so thankful that, that the girls they're having conversations with us. Some of them are finding out how their mom grew up, what kind of lifestyle. And it changed the parent-child relationship, because as you enter the teenage stage, you tend to want to lean towards your peers more than you lean towards your parents. So we're preparing them.
What you're talking about here is one of the things you never learn in school, unfortunately, which is emotional intelligence and learning the social skills that are necessary in life. So when you talk about empowerment, or when you learn to talk about regular biological processes and get comfortable, I'm more an empowered woman when I grow up out of Rise Girls program, because I'm comfortable with who I am. And I find that, and this is my assumption, and you can definitely correct me, I find that that's where sometimes women and potentially our mothers can't provide it to their daughters.
That's where we started. Originally, as Verlie indicated, we started this with UNICEF. When we were in Belize City, this was in 2014 when we started a project in Belize City. And we did assessments with children to try to find out what were the gaps in children's knowledge, attitudes, perceptions as it relates to abuse, and what are the things that we needed to target. And that came out that yes, children had basic information about what abuse was. They could identify a situation of abuse, but they didn't have emotional intelligence to navigate challenges that would later precipitate an abusive situation. So they couldn't read a conversation to see if somebody was trying to lure them. They couldn't figure out if this person who was giving affection was somebody that was going to be a potential harmful person to them or just a friend. Basic things like that, because we don't have a lot of social spaces between adults and children to share this information. And this is not stuff that you can learn from school or from books. This is things that you learn from interaction.
Interaction,
so they
reality.
need safe interaction to be able to learn these things. So we designed this program with UNICEF, the RISE program, to create a forum. And initially when we did it with boys and girls. We had boys because we had male trainers and female trainers. And UNICEF sponsored that for 3 years here in Belize City, and it was very successful. We had very good feedback, and we target at-risk children in inner city communities. It was only in Southside inner city communities. And it got children to speak to their parents. It opened up relationship with children. We had a lot of activities with parents and children. So from that, when that program ended, we had a lot of lessons learned and best practices and how to engage children and parents. And we wanted to scale up the program and to make it even more impactful. And what we found when we did that initial one with the boys and girls were that the girls wanted a space just for girls. They wanted a space where girls could get together and they could talk about issues that affect girls. Because they didn't have that anywhere in their life. They didn't have clubs in school that catered to girls. They didn't have a space where they could talk to their mother about things that were happening to them. They didn't have safe peers that they could talk to. So when the program ended with UNICEF and we were looking what we would do with it next, we sought funding, and CamiFund responded that they would sponsor to do a RISE Girls program. And we developed a curriculum that was specific to the adolescent development needs of girls. So it focused a lot on emotional intelligence, because that's the greatest challenge that girls have during adolescence. Finding out what your feelings are, what your feelings mean, how to develop self-control, how to identify your personality type and to manage that, how you fit in with your peers. These are important issues for girls' development that we don't learn in school.
But you know, one of the things that stuck out to me, because look, I have 3 beautiful girls, one 18, one 8, 1 year old. And I love my daughters, them. I swear the song from Super G comes to mind when it comes to all the negativity. But wouldn't it be very important as well, and I do understand the fact that girls need that girls' time of talking about what girls go through and how girls are supposed to take care of themselves. But I think as well that conversation would be very important while men or boys are there, so they understand what female goes through, because I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of these men turn out to be predators, because they don't understand how a woman transforms. And that's when I think they take advantage via her transformation. How important is it for mothers to have that conversation, or in fact parents to have that conversation? Son, daughter, mommy, daddy, talking about what she goes through and what he goes through. How important is that?
It's very important. And the initial program that we did with UNICEF, we talked to parents about that. How to talk to children, both boys and girls, about developmental issues. We had a lot of, because we had support groups with parents, we had a counselor that ran that program, and they did a lot of practical activities and practiced discipline issues, talking to children about sexual development. They had a lot of things that they did to equip parents with those skills. This program is slightly different because it's focused more on empowering the girls to navigate adolescence than the parents to support child development. The first program was more about parents and supporting child development to create an enabling environment for protecting children. But we are looking at, because everybody is asking us that we need to go back and do something with the boys. Yeah. But the challenge is getting trainers. We had male trainers then, and for me, it is not effective to do a program for boys that is led by women. They need men to do that. They need need young men who will be willing to sit with boys and talk to them in a zone that boys, when we did it with the boys, we did sports. We did a lot of activities with sports because they wanted to be outdoors and did stuff, right. So the trainers would have them outside. They did a lot of activities with sports, and they would have conversations, and that's when they would be talking about issues that were affecting them and get guidance and things like that. So we do want to return to that after we're finished. We have one more year with Kami Fund after we're finished with this program, but we need to secure funding and we need to get the right trainers.
I was going to say, we have quite a few men on this show who always ask the women, you know, when they're going to do something for boys.
We need some men to step up and do it.
For all the men on the show to get together and volunteer with you guys.
So I thought Ms. Diana was saying, though, we do have a session. We do have a session, like we collaborate with the police department to do dating violence. That's one of our
Yes, and they would mix session. That is a mix session.
The boys in that session.
No, it is necessary. And I think one of the things that John said very clearly, and we always miss this message, we have to be real about our situation, and we do have to teach girls how to protect themselves. We have to teach them decision-making skills, making proper risk assessments,
and this is what girls don't have. That's what we found. They really, genuinely, in most cases, believe that people who are trying to send them messages or trying to get their attention have good intentions. They don't have perpetrator radar. They don't pick up that until sometimes it's too late.
Or the risks of sending a nude picture or a nude
not
message.
Navigating things like that.
And all of those we cover in our sessions.
So the sessions they cover a lot about that. They talk about.
But at the same time, we don't have anyone, because I hear it all the time. Why are we telling girls to protect themselves? We should be telling boys
not to harm girls. I agree. Yes.
But until we get that clear message into boys, because not all men are perpetrators, and not all men rape, and not all men victimize women. Right. But there are some that do. And we can't differentiate. And yes, I would love to have a men's department, men's club that goes out and teach boys, don't rape women. It's that simple. Don't violate them, don't abuse them, don't assault them. But in that meantime, you kind of have to balance it. But tapping into what you have seen from, and I especially because you said you worked with inner city schools in Belize City, South Side. What are some of the lessons you learned there as to the gaps that you haven't been able to address as yet?
The lack of male figures in children's lives. I think that was one of the saddest things that came out of that. So many children talked about that. Not having the father present. We had a number of families that counselors were working with where the father was in prison or was overseas or somewhere not able to connect with the children. And that affected children a lot. It's not an issue that's only in Southside, but we saw a greater concentration of it in Southside. And that was a huge problem. We had a number of children that had had their fathers who had been killed or an uncle who had been killed. That was one of the huge things that children talk about. And nobody ever sitting down with them and talking about the impact of that loss and what that meant to know that you would never see your father again, that you will never have this relationship of going out to play ball with your father and doing things that you see other children doing with their father. Everybody just expected them to move along and to keep going. And that was, I think, very sad for us. We heard boys talk about that a lot more than the girls when we were here doing those sessions. Wow. So that's something I think that we need to look at more. How can we ensure, because if the biological parent is not there, we can substitute other male figures in the lives of children and still bring healing and still allow them to meet the emotional development markers that they need to meet. But if we don't do that, children grow up with a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment, and then that sometimes turns into antisocial behavior. And it's because they're looking for belonging, they're looking for acceptance, they want somebody to validate them and to tell them that they're going to be okay, that you know, they're going to be a great father, they are loved, that they need, boys need to hear that. And they weren't hearing that in their environment, and that was sad. I mean, they bonded so well with our male trainers, and it was because they were desperate for just male affirmation, because they didn't have that.
That's so sad.
Man, yeah, it is. It is.
And so we talked about the Rise Girls program. You also do work with human trafficking victims as well?
So in addition, CDF has always, since we started out, looked at sexual exploitation and human trafficking. Those are 2 core areas. And a lot of what we do are prevention programs. The Rise Girls program is actually a prevention program to address cultural norms that will make girls in their adolescent years vulnerable to exploitation and human trafficking. So in addition to that, we work directly with victims of trafficking. If persons are referred to us for counseling, we have been supported people who have come in. We also have a program that we started with IOM last year, the Migration Information Center. And this is a new initiative for Belize and new for us, and it is also a prevention program for trafficking. And essentially what it does is it allows persons, and it's with the persons that we have had come to the Migration Center, Belizeans, persons from overseas, students, all kinds of people. Anybody that has a question or a query or a concern about a migration situation that they need information or advice about. They come to us, we get particulars about their situation. In that process, we are able to identify somebody who may be a migrant in a situation of risk and make effective referrals for them to get help.
What are they at risk for?
So some of them are persons who are asylum seekers. Some of them are migrants who are working, are facing some form of exploitation, or rights abuse on the job. And others of them are persons who are vulnerable because they are undocumented. We have had quite a number of persons come in who came to Belize as babies or as children, went through our school system, and are now turning 17, 18, and are not documented.
Wow.
And this is a very serious issue. They came in, and some of them were born in Belize. Their parents came to Belize, and they grew up here.
But they were never registered.
And they were never registered. We have had children who the schools have referred to us because the children are not documented, and now they are to sit PSC, and they can't sit PSC because they don't have social security card or other documentation. Parents brought them here as children and never documented them.
So the risks there are that they can't complete school, or they can't get a job.
Right, which makes them vulnerable to exploiters and perpetrators, because now the only other jobs they can find is a job in a bar or a job on a farm or some fly-by-night unregistered mechanic shop or somewhere in a backbush area. So then that makes them vulnerable. So a lot of schools are trying to encourage parents to get children documented. A lot of it is fear, and people are ignorant of the process, because if the child is in school, in most of the cases that we have seen, immigration will give them a student permit, and we'll work with the family to ensure that the child is documented, because we don't want children to be in Belize in vulnerable situations. But a lot of the parents don't take the step to get proper documentation because they are fearful of being deported. But what we have found is that many of these persons have been here for a long time. They rarely have persons that come in that are just come to Belize. Most of the people are people that have been here for a long time and have established some continuity here. So I think that one of the other issues that we have been working with IOM, me personally as a consultant, is to try to move the conversation towards the migration and development policy, which Belize really needs. There was a study that was done as part of that by Melanie Smith that showed that most of the migrants that are in Belize are in fact persons who have been here for a long time. We have
so the perception we have of new people coming over all the time.
It's not so. It's actually most of the people that we have encountered are people who have been here for some time, and one of them years. And so we need to take a different approach and a different look, because we can't keep people in an irregular or undocumented status and they start having children. We had one that got married. I don't even know how they got married, but they got married.
It's like how child marriage happens in the country.
They have a valid marriage certificate and married.
But no papers.
Yeah, I don't know. So we have all of these things happening.
Yeah.
We had children that came in and they have a court order, somebody that was appointed as a guardian, but the child was undocumented. So there we have a lot of gaps and loopholes in our structural framework that's putting children at risk.
But we continue to advocate for these things. And are we seeing a rise of people coming in to probably make a report or trying to get themselves documented?
So with the migration center, this is what we have seen, that people are now coming in to ask questions. Okay, how do I correct this? And they're, I now realize I need a passport. I have a sick child that I need to take to Mexico to get treatment, and I have no passport. How do I correct this? So a lot of people are coming in now to try to correct that, but then they have been sitting on the situation for many years and maybe did not know what to do or where to get help. So it's a lot of those situations that need to be resolved, and then we need to fix. So we have two set of things that we need to do: fix all of those people who are in limbo, and then set in proper procedures that all the new people who are coming, before they come, know what they need to do before they come, so that they don't come here and be undocumented. They need to have the proper procedure before they come.
And you have Rise Girls, and you deal with helping children after they've been abused or exploited.
Yes, we have a counseling
So
center.
how big is your staff?
Well, we work a lot with volunteers.
Okay.
We have volunteers that are staff, basically staff. They're not paid, but they show up when they're needed. Yeah. And then we have the youth trainers who are permanent staff. And when we take on big projects, we take on extra work. So if we're doing like when we did a child labor project and we had to do research in Orange Walk and Corozal, we employed young people from those communities and trained them with the help of Fair Trade. And YES partnered with us on that project. And so we had YES staff, our staff, and then the youth enumerators that we took from Orange Walk.
Yeah.
You are looking at your 10th anniversary since the establishment of Child Development Foundation. What's your own, let's talk about what your milestones are, but also kind of just your analysis as to how far we've come.
Well, certainly for us, I think in terms of milestones, setting up the counseling center in 2010 was a huge one. Yeah. Because it allowed us to do so much more with families than we were able to do before. Our counselors have been able to go with children to court. They are working with parents to resolve situations. We have domestic violence clients that come in that we are able to help to get placements and other people to put them up and things like that. So it has widened. That was a huge milestone for us. And I think another big one was the partnership with UNICEF. Okay. When we did that multi-year partnership with UNICEF in 2014, a big part of it was capacity building to make us more effective at what we were doing. And the technical support that UNICEF provided was invaluable. Yeah. The organization would not be where it is today without that. The training that they provided for us, being able to get the right kind of staff that we needed, develop policies and internal procedures and those kinds of things, that was very, very important. So that has given us a platform to where we are now. And then other partnerships that came along, the EU project that allowed us to do research that we could actually document things that were happening, the CAMEFON partnership, the partnership we did with the Clear 2 project to support the legislation that was drafted to combat child labor, and that we're hoping that the government would pass and when it's presented to them soon. Those things have allowed us to widen the platform and to get deeper into the issues in the communities and in families that put children at risk. The next steps for us, we are building a rescue and rehabilitation facility because that's one of the gaps that we have definitely identified. We have a number of situations that we are currently dealing with of adult women in domestic violence situations with children, 4 or 5 children. And our shelters in Belize are not adequately placed to deal with that. Most of our shelters are emergency shelters, which mean they only do short-term placements. We want to build a long-term placement facility and develop a program that transition and equip women to live beyond abuse. And we have looked at some best practice models overseas. We have some support and training that's been done to transition us to that. And we purchased 10 acres of land and have started building, and in the next 3 years that will be up and running.
Congratulations.
That is a big vision to work towards as well. You have some of the groundwork done. But having the opportunity to be here on the show and to talk to people, you know, we're concerned about our children and some of the things that we see them facing. Would you say we have been doing better in protection, but perhaps we just haven't had the public attention to the efforts that's been made?
I think that Belize has improved. Definitely in my other hat as a researcher, I have done the situation analysis of women and children, and we just finished working on the one that will be due for this cycle. But yes, in looking at the overall situation, we have improved. We have increased the number of children registered for birth registration. We have increased the number of children accessing health care, immunization. We have increased the protection framework that people understand more about what abuse is. What we are struggling to do is to provide the appropriate services for effective recovery and rehabilitation, because the reach of our social programs is not wide enough. We don't reach deep enough into the community dynamics. We don't have enough boots on the ground with social workers. They don't have enough resources to do all of what they need to do to transition families into safety and self-determination. We don't have enough safe spaces for families that need to be moved out of their communities. And we don't have enough community support to make the community a safer environment for children. And a lot of that is the cultural attitudes that need to change. So in those areas we are lagging, but we are making progress. And I have been here long enough now that I can say it's good to see that. I have seen families personally that I worked with at the beginning that now have children who were young when I started with them, who are adults, who are thriving, who were the first to finish high school and enter university in their family line, who came out and are now working. I have now had the great privilege of seeing that. So that has been a personal joy, which is why I say, no, I'm ready to transition. Because I feel like I have done a lot of the things that were on my initial goal list. I have finished a lot of them.
Check them out.
And yes, I feel very happy about that.
And Verlie, just from your perspective, from what you've talked to with the girls in your Rise Girls program, what would you tell parents that they should, if they could do one thing today to help to build a better relationship with their daughter, or to improve or help their daughter in the future, what can they do today?
I think, don't be afraid to have conversation. Like, talk to our girls. They need it so much. And I think even in schools, from what I've seen, like teachers calling on us just to do sessions on sexual and reproductive health. Teachers alone, like your parents at home and you're still afraid to talk to students, like don't be afraid to talk to them, because they need the information. And I wish when I was growing up I had the information that we're giving all of these girls now. And so if we do that, we're helping them towards a better future, towards better education, towards ensuring that when they grow up, the entire community and social structure will change, because we're targeting this generation of young women and young men.
Yeah, that's very important. I agree with that. Parents need to be intentional about parenting, and that's what we're not seeing. They need to be intentional. If you want your child to delay early sexual initiation, you have to be intentional about that. You have to provide proper pro-social activities that will keep your child occupied. You have to establish a basis for values and decision making that will help them to navigate peer pressure and the aggression that adult men is going to bring to them. You have to prepare your child about that. And set the example. Very important. Set the example. Don't have 3, 4, 5 men come in your house and tell your child that you don't want them to don't have sex until they're 20. That's probably not going to work. Set the proper example. And if you have made mistakes about your life in your own journey, don't be afraid to use that as a teachable tool for your children.
That's right.
Explain that to them. Be honest. Your children don't know. They figure it out. So, yes. Yes. Be honest. Use where you have made mistakes as a jumping off point to help them to make better decisions about their life.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Belize. So stay tuned.